What are the barriers to happiness? How do we heal? How do we maximize our potential? How do we remember who we are? How can we be of service to the world? Join the World Happiness Fest, the largest forum of happiness and well-being in the world. Visit us at www.worldhappiness.foundation. We are realizing a world with freedom, consciousness, and happiness for all.
Johan Calleman, if there is somebody inspiring in the world of macrocosmic quantum theories, that's you, because you actually coined what that is. So welcome to the World Happiness Week and this World Happiness Fest. And as you know, we want to understand the opportunities and possibilities for world happiness from so many different angles. And what you've been doing for the last years is just remarkable. So thank you so much, Carl, for being part of the week.
Thank you so much, Luis. To you too. You know, I think this whole initiative of the World Happiness Foundation and setting that as one of the major directions for the work of humanity is really by itself quite revolutionary and a very valuable contribution to what we need to know and do at the current time.
So thank you so much. Coming from you, from somebody who understands quantum leaps, is very, very important. So why don't we go deeper into what macrocosmic quantum theory is and what does it bring to the world today?
Yeah. So, you know, quantum theory, pretty much everyone has heard about it, at least anyone who is interested in novel thinking of all kinds. But quantum theory in its traditional form, which is microcosmic quantum theory, is now about 100 years old. And for a long time, this was just a very fascinating subject for physicists and chemists and people in the hard sciences. You know, especially I would say that the atom model created by Niels Bohr in 1913, with the whole idea that there are such things as quantum leaps when it comes to the orbits of electrons revolving around the nucleus of an atom. That whole concept is really a little bit of a miracle, something that we really can't grasp from our everyday experience of how reality works. In other words, there is a shift. There is a shift. In instantaneous shift between the energy levels of electrons that takes place under certain conditions inside the electron. Now, since that time, since the initial pioneers worked with microcosmic quantum theory, it's broadened its appeal to people much far outside of the actual hard sciences where it was developed. And particularly in the past 20 years, there's been a lot of focus on it among people that are interested in spirituality and consciousness. And the reason is that there is, I think, a feeling that there is some kind of an underlying field to reality that is provided by quantum theory, and that underlying field is somehow connected to human spirituality, and to the divine as such. And but the thing is, you know, I'm a doctor of physical biology, so I have a background and have been teaching quantum theory on this microcosmic level for a few years, and what I have come to conclude from my scientific viewpoint is that what happens on a subatomic level really doesn't cover or provide any answers to the kind of questions that people are asking when it comes to the large-scale evolution of consciousness in the universe. In other words, whatever happens on the microcosmic quantum level is not really relevant to our own evolution and our own place in the world. It's not really relevant to the evolution of biological species. It's not really relevant to the evolution of human history, and its very many different aspects. And so, based on this, and based on these insights of, you might say, that the microcosmic quantum theory doesn't cover a theory for the evolution of the universe, I have developed something called macrocosmic quantum theory. And this inspiration to this really came from the calendar system of the ancient Maya. And and not only from them, I should say. Many of the concepts that we find from the Maya were shared in ancient times by many, many different civilizations. Oops. But there is still something special about the Maya in this regard. You know, you can go to, say, India or Egypt, and you will find that they talked about cosmic serpents as major creation factors. The thing, though, is that the Maya, in contrast to all other ancient civilizations, they developed a calendar system of the evolution of consciousness. And a calendar means that you have numbers. And once you have numbers, you really have an inroad to modern science. You will then have the possibility of see if your hypothesis actually matches not only your hypothesis, but the ancient Mayan calendrical system, whether it actually matches the evolution of history as we know it. And so that's the reason that I think the Maya are very, very special, because they give us a means of connecting our understanding of the universe and all the modern database for how it has evolved, and connecting that with the ancient ideas of an evolving consciousness that typically was symbolized by the plumed serpent or serpents or dragons and these kind of movements of invisible forces. And so that is, in short, the background to developing the macrocosmic quantum theory. But you know, the whole idea from the Maya that we get is that evolution of consciousness, and meaning everything that happens in the universe is ultimately is a product of the evolution of consciousness. And that proceeds, as we can see on this diagram, in a stepwise fashion. That's the reason that they built their pyramids as terraces. So here you can see, if you climb this pyramid that you can see, you're actually climbing 9 different levels of evolution, 9 different waves, each of which provides a particular state of consciousness to the human mind. And so what you see here on to the right is only for the 5 highest waves, you see the corresponding states of consciousness. And each one of them then has a particular geometry. You can see there are crosses there that defines a particular geometry, but you might also see it as filters that determine what aspects of reality will you be able to perceive, how will you perceive it, how will you express it, how will you recreate it, and so forth. So because of this, people in different eras, under the influence of different waves, have created what you might say different worlds, different world ages. And I would say this has nothing to do, world ages has nothing to do with astrology. It's about the evolution of consciousness and not about the physical physical planets or something like that. Quantum theory is not about physics in the Newtonian sense of the word. Quantum theory is about the underlying field. And then you can also see to the right there that each of these waves, each of which creates a particular state of consciousness, is activated at specific points in time. And that is then really what determines the fact that we have a history, that we're not just standing in the same place all the time. But as new states of consciousness like this have been activated in the cosmos and made accessible to human beings, we have changed and evolved. And this is a long story presented in 7 books of mine, and this is not the time to go into any kind of detail about it. But what I do want you to see in this particular slide is the fact that if you look at these 5 highest levels of consciousness, there is an overall pattern. The pattern is from unity in the light that you can see in the 5th wave, through separation, through a sequence of different filters provided by the 6th and 7th and the 8th wave, it's a return then to the 9th wave state of consciousness in the light, unified consciousness in the light. And so in this sense, unlike what many people might have heard, the Mayan calendar system provides a kind of overall direction for the evolution of humanity. It tells us what states of consciousness are accessible to us. And then to some extent, or to a large extent actually, it's up to us to develop the means in order to access these different consciousness. And to me, the only thing that makes sense is to see this as a climb of a cosmic evolution scheme, ultimately leading to the return of that state of unity on a higher level.
So in this case, if we focus on consciousness, can you define what consciousness is for you, and what is the state of human consciousness today with respect to what it was a few hundred years ago, and with respect to what it's going to be in a couple of hundred years from now?
Yeah, well, to me, consciousness just means something like subjective experience, or our ability to have a subjective experience. And which means, in other words, without consciousness, we would not exist as living beings, really. So it's almost like synonymous with life, consciousness and life. But this ability to have this subjective experience that makes us feel that we are there is somebody in there, so to speak, in us, so to speak. It can take different forms. I think the universe begins with consciousness, really, and then it develops the material universe around itself. Consciousness is primary to matter, and as it does that, it also develops us into human beings, eventually with a more and more sophisticated ability to experience difference through our senses, etc., etc. But it's not a single straight one consciousness. As this picture shows, there are several different states of consciousness, and each one of them means that we have different kinds of subjective experiences. And where we are now, I would say, is that, especially then after March 9th, 2011, is that all of these 9 levels of consciousness are accessible. They have all been activated in the cosmos and become accessible to us human beings. But it's not just then to say, okay, then we know that this or that will happen. It's a little bit different like that, because first of all, the human beings need to access these states of consciousness. And at the current time, all of these states of consciousness are in principle running in parallel and accessible. And we need to cultivate these states of consciousness. We need to develop the methods, you might say, and the intentions. I would say, if we want to follow the cosmic plan, we need to do in such a way that we actually access the highest level, the 9th wave there, where there are no filters, where we do not project separation either to others or to ourselves. It's not exactly because there is a human choice involved in how we relate to these different states. It's not just predictable exactly how, at least from this point in time, how things will turn out. It will depend so much. All I can say is that, the purpose, as far as I can understand it, of this whole creation is for humanity to aim for that unity state. And it's a happy state in the sense that it's not creating separation. And it's a happy state in the sense that it doesn't mean that you project dualities on other people and project bad, good, etc., etc. It's an accepting state, because it is the light that comes through without any kind of filter. But at this point, I'm not saying that anything, I'm not going into saying this or that will happen. There is also, as we talked about before this interview, there is also a certain timing of how these different waves will play out. And so you can say that the accessibilities of states will all be altered. The possibilities will be different in the times ahead. And just as a very rough statement, I would say that there is still quite some tough times up until the year 2031, where I think there will be new possibilities, especially in the 7th wave, in order to return to a sound, a sane and sound globality. You know, not globality has got a bad reputation because people think that it's somebody who dominates everybody else. That's not what I mean. But my globality is respect for all traditions, all nations, and a willingness for all of them to merge in a sense and collaborate and so forth. And that possibility will increase in 2031. And I would also say that there will be the possibility of a sound return to democracy that has suffered, I think, in the past couple of years. And but will this happen is another question. You know, it really is like quantum theory and the possibilities of doing these kind of quantum leaps. Quantum theory is really about possibilities and probabilities, you might say. It is not deterministic. And that's true. There are many parallels if you look at the macrocosmic quantum theory and microcosmic quantum theory. And one of these parallels is the fact that, you know, it's not deterministic. It just talks about different potentialities. And that's where we come in, we human beings.
Well, this is so so helpful. I'm a big follower and fan of David Bohm with the infinite potential. So I think that you are very much linking this, and I would love to ask you a bit more about the elements of this macrocosmic quantum theory, because basically what I see here is that these waves are coming from somewhere. And reading your books, that's coming from the heart of the universe, of the center of creation. Those waves are, from a symbolic point of view, is the serpent, the plum serpent that the Mayas were talking about. So basically you are talking about the heart of creation, which is the tree of life. You are talking about the serpent, which are the waves. And then you incorporate another very important element, which is the duality and the concept of yin and yang, and the concept of a separation in many ways before the union. And something that we are learning a lot from many researchers and experts in non-duality is that we are getting into an opportunity to get into non-duality when we understand how to get there. So can you please go further and a bit deeper into the key elements of this theory? And then what do we do with that information? Because something else that you say is that our brain, in this case, are receptors of all these waves coming. So I think that you will incorporate really important elements that can give us a new perspective, actually what you call a new theory of biology and how humans are progressing in the world. So can we go a bit deeper about the elements, these elements?
Yes. So these are very big questions, and I have developed the answers that I'm giving to them in a number of books. You know, especially then the quantum science of psychedelics, which is not only about psychedelics. It has maybe 1/3 of psychedelics, but it really provides a model of the mind that from which we can really understand how psychedelics work. But it's also in the previous, the 9 waves of creation. And you know, we have these concepts from ancient times, like the tree of life, as you mentioned, and to the Maya, sometimes that would be called the place of creation, or it would be called the heart of the heavens, or something like that. And then we have the serpent, which is both the tree of life and the serpents are ubiquitous concepts. You're hard-pressed to find any culture on our planet from ancient times that did not have these as central components of their cosmologies. And then if you go to the average person in the modern world, have no clue about this. And so either you have to say that the ancients did not, they were just superstitious idiots, they didn't know anything, or the truth is there is something we don't see. And that's what I believe. There is something we have not wanted to see for whatever reasons. And we need to, in order to see this, we need to translate the ancient concepts into a little bit more modern language. And that's where quantum theory comes in, where you can, for instance, what I'm showing here is a picture from Dr. Singhal, who made a very interesting study of the entire cosmos and the number of quasars, which are huge radiation sources on a large distance from ourselves, and who found that, you know, if there is a line, if he put a line on something that's called the preferred axis in cosmology, an axis that encompasses the entire universe as we know it, then you found that there is a major significant difference in the numbers of these on the one side of the universe compared to the other side of the universe. And so there is what I would say an actual basis for the idea of a yang and a yin, a expansive hemisphere of the universe and a more stable form of the hemisphere of the universe, as we can say. And yin and yang then would get an explanation, you know, especially if you look upon the yin and yang as being transferred step by step, trickled down from this huge cosmic level that I just showed you, through the galaxy, down to the heliosphere, down to the planet, and down ultimately to ourselves, who are the receivers of this particular kind of polarity. And then by receiving through that reception, our perception of reality will change. Yin and yang is a critical thing for all creativity. Unless there was that kind of a distinction between the two hemispheres, everything would just be an amorphous mixture of nothingness, basically. But because that of that duality, there are things. We have a sort of a reality around us of all kinds of things, you might say. Now, this axis that was just recently, in 2004, I call that recently here, discovered by modern science through the satellites they've sent out to measure the cosmic microwave background radiation, that if you just say that, hey, this is not just an axis, this is the tree of life, then things start to make sense. It's just you just make that choice. You say, this is what the ancients talked about. This axis that separates the hemispheres of not only of the universe as such, but of the galaxy, of the planet, and of ourselves. Then we will start to see how all of this universe has been created. And part of that is also then to look at the phenomenon of serpents. So, you know, serpents are exist in all kinds of traditions, and these are just examples of them. But as the biblical story tells us, which I do believe is a kind of a little bit of politicized story, but still, the truth is that the serpents are related to the tree of life. In many, many traditions, there are stories where trees of life and serpents are connected. And the serpents are simply sine waves. They're these waves that the tree of life is sending out, and that we are receiving. And as we receive those, then we will also then have a change of mind, you might say. And what all this leads up to is that the mind, for instance, is not created by our brains, which is, one of the big misconceptions of modern science. Our minds are downloaded by our brains, and only as these waves, called serpents by the ancients, what else could they call them, I should say? Only as they are downloaded to the brain will we have a mind. So it's an interesting, what should I say, synergy, you might say, between these waves and our brains that creates our minds. And then once you see that, you will also see the possibility of an evolution of consciousness, because our brains have the ability to download, or if you like, resonate with these different states of consciousness brought by the serpents.
Well, when we look at the space of transformational technologies, right now technology is going so fast that we have seen already sensors, we have already seen wearables, and we've seen technology that is accelerating the access to all these reception of waves. Because if the brain is downloading, the more open we can be to that download, the easier it will be to elevate our consciousness. This is the way I understand it. So yeah. Technology at some point is really going to allow every human being to download as much as they can. So is this right? And what is the limit to download consciousness?
Yeah. I don't know what the limit is, except that I think unity, a non-filtered state of consciousness, that is the ultimate, regardless of any technology. I think I tend to believe that is the ultimate. And I think that's just what I want to respond to that.
Okay, because when we talk about technology, we talk about not just technical things, but we talk about meditation. So right now, meditation is becoming mainstream, and people start to know how to do that. Or we do drumming with shamans. They use music, dancing, drumming. We see now that psychedelics are being legalized in, at least for some research, after all what happened in the 60s and 70s. So I think I call that technology as well, is that the opportunity for us to use tools that are going to be helping us to expand the opportunity to get that consciousness.
Okay, now I understand you better, because I immediately thought about all the digital world and so forth when I heard you say technology. But then, yes, absolutely, as you're saying, there's been these tools, you might say, that have aided our access to especially then the ninth wave, the unity consciousness, and that includes this whole range of what would you call these kind of technologies? Psycho-spiritual technologies, maybe. That would be like meditation, like yoga, like breath work, like psychedelics, and they're all really modalities, I think, of techniques that that could help you to disengage the kind of dualist mind that was created by, especially then, one of these waves, the sixth wave. That was really what gave people the structured mind and allowed us to create civilizations with a particular mindset and so forth. And I would say that there are good sides to civilization. There certainly have been good sides to civilizations, but there have also been negative sides, because that kind of a mindset that created the civilization has been very much dualistic, has been very much based on separating the rulers and the ruled, the good and the bad, the so-called good and the so-called bad, and really making separate human beings. And now, so if it's possible to disengage that kind of a duality at the level where we have now climbed to on the cosmic pyramid, if you like, if it's possible to disengage that, then those techniques, the ones that we just mentioned, the psychedelics, the meditations, the yogas, the breath work, and a couple of other things like that, like drumming, or more connected to the earth and so forth, but still that would sort of facilitate. It wouldn't immediately give us the access to the ninth wave or that unity state of consciousness, but it would facilitate our climb to that level. And that is an important aspect of our own time, that these phenomena have become so much mainstream, some of them at least, that people are in principle have many of the tools required for this ultimate quantum leap.
I have a follow-up question, or probably the last question, about one topic that we haven't talked yet, but I think is a byproduct of some of the waves, and I would love to understand a bit more, is the concept of ego, and the concept of ego related to duality. Because at some point, when you talk about this ninth wave and the concept of unity, it has a lot to do with the concept of ego. Can you explain a bit more where is the ego coming from, and what is the role of this ego into human evolution?
Yeah, okay, let's see. Am I so lucky that I have one of the pictures for that? No, it doesn't seem I'm that lucky. So anyway, first of all, what is not the ego? The ego is not a part of our brain or some kind of function that is a natural constituent of our brains. It is something that has developed over time, and it is something that has developed as a function of these different waves. So, for instance, one of the interesting things that you can understand by following how humans have looked upon themselves over time, over the past 100,000 years, is that the initial forms of art that we know humans have produced, like the cave paintings in Spain and France, they don't show a lot of humans. In fact, you'll have to look for humans anywhere. And then, from 10,000 years on, you're starting to see human beings portrayed on cliff sides and so forth, but they're not very personalized, individualized. They certainly don't look like rulers or anything like that. But you're starting to see humans are starting to develop some kind of a self-awareness. And then comes the sixth wave activation that took place in 3200 BC and led to the creation of civilizations, typically ruled by some kind of a pharaoh or king or something like that. And then a process starts where the human individual, and then in particular, certain ones are developing a personality trait, I would say, that is a function of this duality, this separation between rulers and ruled. And so the wave at that time allowed the human beings to create a dominance aspect of themselves. And that ultimately led to a specific function of the mind created by these waves that created people that have big egos, dominance aspects. And you can discuss that, you can point out that in the kind of world people have been living in the past 5,000 years, there has been some kind of a value to having that kind of a aspects of your mind. But on the other hand, in the large scale of things, it is not, certainly at this point, is not a very good thing for humanity at large. And if anything, where we need to go is to jointly access the ninth wave in such a way that we find that we actually have the ability to tune in to the very same unity consciousness, all of us, really, not not just sort of I do my own thing, or as we mostly do at the current time. And that's really the great danger. And thinking about this capitalism that you're calling about, we've had this idea that I'll be happy on my own. I know I will find that way myself, how to create happiness for myself. And that is not a constructive point of departure at our current time. We will have to seek to develop such capitalism on together, and which you can't just slay the ego, as the ancient Eastern traditions would say, but we can develop the higher levels of consciousness to such a way that the ego gets an increasingly less power over ourselves.
Well, I think that Dr. Calleman, we could be talking for days. It's amazing. I mean, all your books bring another level of insight and very practical at the same time. So I think that your contribution to human progress is just incredible. So I want to say thank you very much, because what you are doing is remarkable, and I appreciate very much that you can share this with all of us. Do you have a final recommendation for people who want to navigate in the right way the ninth wave and all the others? Because we have 9 waves actually working at the same time right now for the first time in human history, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I really, there is something profoundly inspiring by the kind of project that you are working with, and maybe maybe the ultimate goal or direction for ourselves and the current time is really happiness, and not unity or anything like that. But unity will be a necessary component in order to forge that happiness that everyone is aspiring to at the current time. I don't, I think I really covered what I wanted to say in those final remarks. I do want to, just continue a little bit maybe and strengthen my point when it comes to this issue of the ego and so forth. In other words, if you look, I think I will allow myself to show to come back to, where do we have it? Oh, there we go. So, just to look at to the right there, or maybe you're not seeing. Let's see. Are you sharing? No, I'm not sharing. Right. Sorry.
No, you stop sharing. You have to share again.
Yeah, I have to share the screen. Okay. Okay. So here we go again with this. So where we are now, and it's a lot of history, as you can see. This goes back, the 5 levels here goes back 100,000 years, and then it covers the historical evolution of humanity, the 5,000 years, and then a couple of others. Now, the 8th wave was activated only in 1999, so a lot of people have lived through that, and the most obvious expression of it is the digitalization of the world and the new world created by that. And then the 9th wave was much more recently activated in 2011. What I do want to say here is there is a risk, you might say, by this 8th wave. As you can see, that is, you might say, yes, it's created an interesting world of digital phenomena. It's actually helped the right brain half come forth, meaning meditation, psychedelics, breath work, and all that kind of thing. It certainly has helped that strengthening of the right brain half, certainly has strengthened the roles of women in the world, and so forth. So, it does provide for some kind of a background to the potential quantum leap to the unity of the 9th wave. But it does also create almost like a seductive individualism. The very fact that it's a dualist wave makes people, it simply makes them separate. And we can easily see that through the digital world, that it creates a lot of separation, and especially at the current time. So I do want to emphasize here that nobody gets to the 9th wave without doing a quantum leap. Something have to go into some different state of functioning, and that way of functioning is not just about my individual development into some kind of a spiritual master or whatever it is that some people are aspiring to. No, the quantum leap to the 9th wave, it requires that you, first of all, an intention to sort of harmonize yourself truly and very directly with this particular cosmic influence, and do that jointly with other people, not just, oh, it's my development. No, it's not my development. This is for all, and it has to be, not a surrendering, not a surrendering, it has to be done by surrendering to this field, not surrendering to some kind of powerful individual or guru or whatever. It is surrendering to a cosmic, non-human, but divine field. And if we can do that jointly, then we will be part of the final quantum leap to that might restore happiness to humanity.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I feel it. And I think that, as you know, we are going through the biggest pandemic of loneliness in the world. We know that. And we know about these 3 levels of separation: separation with self, separation with communities, separation with nature and beyond. So I feel that your message is very, very important. And I would say that actually what we are doing with this festival, with the foundation and everything, is to join forces, because we know that collective trauma requires collective healing. So I think that your theory really reinforces that we have to go into collective healing.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Professor Dr. Calleman. It's a pleasure, and we'll keep the conversation going forward with many more things, I'm sure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Luis. My pleasure.